Welcome to Learning Unity with the 3D Game Kit. In this tutorial, we're diving into contact damage components and how you can use it to add damage to the scene so that there's extra hazards for the player. We're also going to explore vegetation and rock painter tools to enhance your scene by painting plants and rocks to put in those finishing touches. We'll also take a look at the tuning levers for the player character so you can adjust how it interacts with the environment. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started and take a look at how we can achieve this. So the first thing I want to talk about is going to be setting up some contact damage entry hazards. I'm going to come in here and we're going to disable our nav mesh again, which is under the enemies tab. And we're going to just grab a plant here, maybe something spiky looking. So if we go to vegetation, we got some spiky looking plants here, and maybe I'll make a different version of this where it's scaled down. So something like this, looks like it could potentially hurt us. So let's go ahead and make it do that. The way we can do this is by adding a component called a contact damager. So I can go to add component and we could add contact damager. And this is pretty straightforward. You'll see that the contact damager script says the amount. We're going to set that to 1 for this one, and the damage layers, what it can damage. So in this case, we could set this to damage everything, which would be hilarious. We could set it to damage the player. We could also set it to potentially damage any character in the scene. So I believe characters is a flag for the creatures. So if you wanted to make it sort of a strategy where you could kite the enemy into these plants, you could do that. And if you take a look at the chomper, for example, you'll see that it is under the enemy layer. So if we come back to this, instead of characters, we can uncheck characters and just put enemy, or we could put all of them just to cover our bases. Long story short, this is going to damage whatever touches it. Now, in order for this to work, it needs to have a collider attached to it. We currently have a mesh collider, but it's not set to be a trigger, and we don't want it to be. The reason why is we want to control the area this is damaging, and if it's just the geometry area, it's not going to work out that well. So I'm going to add component here. We're going to add a box collider to this, and we can shape this box collider to be about the size. If you expand out the box collider, you can click this button here to edit it. So I'm going to pull this up, and sometimes this can be a bit finicky. So let's click that button there, and then we can just pull this up and pull this out. And give it a little bit of volume, so that way we have our spiky plant. And what we need to do to make it work with this contact damager script is click is trigger. And what that's going to do is it's going to make this the trigger for the contact script. And I might actually move it up in the hierarchy. I don't think it matters, but kind of helps logically. And that's going to be what it works with, what makes the damage come. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit play and see if this is functioning. So if I run over to that plant and I bump into it, I should take damage. And I do. Ouch. You see I have an immunity for a little bit, but we can run into it again. Ouch. Now let's see if it's the same for some enemies. Let's go ahead and take our spiky plant here and let's just bring it near this guy and see if we can't make him run into it. All right. Whoop. That intro script. I need to rotate her so she's not running that way every time. Okay. Oh, forgot a step. We need to turn on our nav mesh. So let's go and enable that nav mesh. Make sure it's baked to the most recent setup. Now let's give it another shot. So if we run in here now, let's see if we can get him to chase us. He's chasing. Let's hide behind the plant. Not working. You can see his, oh, there we go. We got him. We got him. Awesome. So if he wasn't going to work, I was going to say we could check if he can collide with it. So one of the things you can do is you can come under the edit menu here. You can go to project settings and you can look under the physics menu, and the physics is going to determine who can interact with what. Down here on this chart, you can see all the different things here. We can see inside of here, we should have player. These are the things the player can interact with. We have vegetation. This is what vegetation can interact with. And then somewhere in here, we should also have the tag for enemies. So you can see the enemy tag right here. And if we take a look at that, we can look and see if the enemy can collide with the vegetation or not. And I'm actually not sure if it can. But we could check what those are going to be able to interact with in terms of their structure. Same with this here. So you can see that the terrain is interacting with enemies. Vegetation's interacting with enemies. So that's all set up. So we can actually customize that there, which is pretty cool. As for my spiky plant, I'll go ahead and maybe throw it in the corner for now. But that's just a way we could add, damage to these things if we wanted to, which is pretty cool. Now, that's just one thing we could do. We could set that up with pretty much anything, which is pretty cool. So you could add that damage script to whatever you want. If you wanted to make lava, or if you wanted to make spiky balls or spiky roller balls, there's all sorts of cool stuff you could do. You could even try using the physics system to achieve that Unity has built in. If you did this drop down thing with a boss here, rather than dropping a boss, maybe you drop a bunch of on-contact spike balls or something. So have some fun with it, see what you can do. Let's come in here and just rebake the nav mesh since we have a hole in the mesh there, and quickly save. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Vegetation and Rock Painter. This is one of those things that's built into this. Let me turn off my nav mesh and we can take a look at this guy. It's going to be in our hierarchy tools. So if you take a look under tools, you'll see this Vegetation Painter and this Rock Painter. You can actually use these to paint, which is kind of neat. You'll see that they have this Vegetation Small, Vegetation Large, Ground Cover, and we can input some things here. So the Vegetation has subcategories which allow us to paint vegetation into the scene. You can see here it's set to be a brush, and we have different types of things we can do. Now, the one downside is this does take into account colliders. So you can see when I click into the ground cover, it's activating, and what's going on here is all the colliders are currently affecting it. We can toggle some of these things here, but we might have to deactivate some of those colliders to get this to work. But you can see I can actually just come in here with this brush and click, and we can actually place this. So if I wanted to add sort of a swampy grass area here, you can see I can do that. And as I click, it's just going to place these. Now, if you look under the hood, it's actually physically placing geometry. So just be mindful of that. And like I mentioned, the one finicky thing to this tool is you will see that it is going to latch on to colliders. And I don't think there's a way for us to change that. So we might need to. But you can see, that's a great way to kind of come in here and do this. I mentioned earlier in the series that we'd cover this, but you could also just kind of manually place it. That's one of the reasons you might want to manually place it. You can see that floating there. Not really great. You might be able to just deactivate everything to do this. But yeah, just be mindful of it. So that's kind of ground cover. We have Vegetation Small. This has all the other various vegetation in here. So, if I wanted to come in here and add some of these, I could. I'm trying to remember. I thought this had some sort of lily pad thing, but I guess it doesn't. But, if we wanted to add in some funky plants, we could do so. And you'll see it actually goes through a handful of these and rotates, which is pretty cool. So you can actually get some good variety without needing to manually rotate. And there's a lot of neat little tools like this. This is, what we might call a proprietary tool because it's built into this kit. Companies often have these proprietary tools that allow them to do cool stuff. And this would probably be something we'd want to do earlier on in the process than now, right? When we design levels, it's kind of an iterative process where there's art, there's design, that kind of stuff. So the cool thing, though, is we can come in here and kind of refine this, add in some plants. Vegetation medium, if we come in here, these are going to be like medium size. So add some medium size details here and there. I'll just add it to some of the areas we can actually see. Might be interesting to add some to the swamp here. And then, of course, we have large ones, too. So we can come into Vegetation Large, and these are going to be things like trees. You can see these are pretty gnarly. Might make some interesting visuals up high, some scarce trees in this alien landscape. And you can add variations here. So in theory, you can add your own stuff, which is kind of cool. Those trees are really big. These ones are really small. Seems like the scale's all over the place with these, but yeah, you can definitely add more life to the scene. Just be aware of those colliders, and if you need to, you can actually deactivate the colliders by doing the click active on whatever the object is. I don't really feel like hunting it down, so I'm not going to do that, but in theory, we can. I like these sort of swampy palm trees. We'll just add one there. And then the rocks, same deal. You can see rock small. They just have kind of one variation, but you can come in here and you can go to town, kind of adding these into the scene. Just be careful you don't add floating rocks like I just did, and be mindful of the colliders that you've added to the scene, because those are all going to factor in. And a lot of these are the invisible ones. So now if we hit play, you know, our scene should start to have a little bit more life to it, a little bit more visual interest, and yeah, look cool. So you see there's an issue with the floating rocks. I believe we can go in there and manually place them afterwards. You can also delete ones. You know, these ones are all looking fine. No issues there. I didn't turn my nav mesh on, so I want to do that. We got our trees. So yeah, pretty cool. And then, of course, if we look up high, we have our weird alien trees going now. A little bit more life. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we kind of wrap up just what we are covering for level building is the character. So let's go ahead and find Ellen. We haven't had a chance to really dig into her too much, but if you take a look at her, if you remember, we did the jump speed. You can also adjust things like turn speed, move forward speed, all sorts of really good stuff. You could turn on and off can attack, so that's something you could set up as an enable. That's how they did it for the weapon. And you can see a lot of references here. So feel free to play with these. The other thing I'd mention is just think about the direction she starts in. I've been starting backwards this whole time. We can rotate her to start forward, and that would probably help a lot. So let's hit play, and now she should at least be facing forward. But you can continue to kind of fine-tune and polish the gravity and the movement speed to fit your game style. So I've kind of kept my gravity low, so that way she can't just goat up everything. But you could make yours higher or lower depending. And I think this is also a per level thing. So, you know, if you wanted to make like a moon level, you could, in theory, do that. All right. So let's go ahead and save and kind of reorganize our scene. I added this vegetation here. I'm just going to put that under enemies or under our level assets, maybe as a hazard. I'll just put it under there for now. I might want to create a new subcategory. But let's save and wrap this up. So that's going to conclude this tutorial. You've now learned how to implement contact damage if you want to make yourself some prickly plants or some other obstacle. We took a look at painting vegetation and rocks into the scene. What I would suggest is if you make a new scene, maybe consider doing that early on so the colliders aren't in the way. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, please drop a like, comment, let me know how your project's coming along, and subscribe for more videos within this series and future videos as well. Thank you for watching, and keep building an amazing level.